Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Keep Indiana Learning's book study on The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. My name is Melissa Wally, and I am an innovation coach with Keep Indiana Learning. I also serve as an ed tech specialist and technology coach for Hanover Community Schools. Today is episode 2 of the book study, and we are discussing chapters 2 through 4, and there is so much to talk about. Diana and I are the hosts of each session, and Amy Stevens is back with us again today, and she will be back more. And I get the pleasure of introducing her. So thank you for joining us, Amy.
Yay! Thank you for having me again. This has been such a joy to not only get started on, with YouTube, but also with this amazing book. And the fact that we had so many chapters to read and dig into and prepare for today, just really, I'm excited. But again, I'm Amy Stevens. I'm a technology integration specialist for South Henry School Corporation. And I also teach grades K through 5 as a specials teacher, the Project Lead the Way launch curriculum. I'm a Keep Indiana Learning innovation coach, as well as an Armstrong teacher, an Apple Distinguished Educator, and just true champion for educators overall. And just, again, happy to be here. So thank you for having me.
We're excited you join us, Amy, because if you've ever spent time with Amy, you know you just feel better by being in her presence. She's one of those positive people that is just amazing.
Thank you.
So I'm Diana Knox. I am a technology instructional specialist from Clay Community Schools. I work as an innovation coach with Keep Indiana Learning. I'm a ISTE certified educator, a Canvas certified educator. I work on the HEC board. And I've started to dabble in philanthropic work with our community foundation. So I'm going to be our affiliate board vice president this coming year, and then also on the Wabash Valley Community Foundation board. So getting kind of back in there, full circle, going back around there. So we're excited. There's so much. Amy mentioned this. I think Melissa did too. This was an intense set of chapters to read, and we're only at the beginning. So I can't wait to see where we go. But let's dive into chapter 2. What do we think?
Yeah, so I will start us off. So chapter 2 started us off like with another one of these great stories where let's do a comparison. And I love the thought of like Rip Van Winkle falling asleep and then waking up to this world where people are all staring at these rectangles and they're not looking at each other, and they're not talking in public places. And even children are doing this. Everyone's doing this. And what a strange world that would be. So that like really puts a visual in your head when you think about the change that took place just in life and society in general. And he's right. Like if you look at a 10-year span of what changed, it's a really scary comparison, but it's true. So that, what did you guys think about that?
Well, it's such a shift from like those traditional values. Like my dad is 92. You guys know this because we hang out outside of this, but my dad's 92. And so family is like so central to like, if you sit down, we sit down together at dinner. There's no phones at the table. We talk, there's interaction. And so my dad, every time we go out in public and he sees these tables that are just staring at the phones and not interacting with one another, he's like, what are they doing? He just doesn't get it. It blows his mind.
You know, my oldest was born in 2009, and I'll never forget, at that time, not many people had a smartphone. I mean, it was like 2008, I believe, when the first iPhone came out. And I will never forget holding her as a baby. I was still on maternity leave. And we had some friends come over and one of them had an iPhone and they were like, look, and they were taking pictures and they were showing me the App Store. And I was like, I just was able to wrap my head around like an iPod and like MP3s and how like what I was going to do with like my Case Logic CD wallet, right? Like I was just getting ready to wrap my arms around that. Now you're showing me this like black rectangle. And then slowly as the years went on, I watched more and more and more, and it just happened so rapidly that like, now it's like what version of phone or, Galaxy or Android or whatever the brand is, like, we're all connected. And again, I think that was a great way to open this up. And just another, just little disclaimer, chapters 1-4, they make up part 1 of this book, where they do a lot of front loading. The author, Jonathan, does a lot of front loading on giving you a background on brain development, early childhood development, so you can really kind of understand where the book is going. And so, oh my goodness gracious, as educators, and me especially as an early education, where my focus is, watching children grow and play development was huge. So, and then of course my 4th graders do an amazing brain module. So I'm like, ooh, how can I tie this in with that? Because it is so amazing to see the power of our human brain. And I know, the more connections we have, the stronger the brain, right? And there's an age or a time period too. And so, we've talked about like these ways of what does play look like, and what do children need to do in childhood. And so I thought it was a very appropriate title for chapter 2. What do they need to do in childhood?
Well, and even getting into this, the concept of how our brains have adapted over time based on like the early hunter-gatherer society, and where we were not the apex predator in the midst of everything, and we were the prey. And then how, as our brains grew and we adapted, so that we could learn more. That history and that in-depth look at that was pretty fascinating for me as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Was too. And then I also thought about, I thought what else was interesting is how he talked about how the brain grows through life, and how it doesn't grow that much in late childhood, but what it's doing is making the connections. And so it does much of the growth early in life, and then kind of slows down in growing, but the connections is what's important as you go through life. And so I thought that was important. So those experiences is what is important all through childhood. And that really hit me, like time and time again through this section of the book. He said that the smartphone is blocking, it's an experience blocker. Yeah. Because you're looking down, you're on your phone, and you're missing out on different experiences that are making those connections and growing your brain. And that really was like, yeah, that really says it. Like, that's true. Yeah.
And then sorry, Amy, I didn't mean to step on you. Go ahead.
There's a lot to say.
I know. I was just thinking about like that, what you were saying, that idea about your brain needs to be able to grow and adapt for change, pivot quickly, to survive, right? And so something really interesting happened where the smartphone was introduced within 10 to 20 years of parenting styles changing because of society and culture and, stranger danger. And so this whole idea of unsupervised play and supervised play was a big part of this conversation of what children need to do in childhood. And I almost kind of wish we had like some teenage guests on with us today, to kind of like talk about like, what does play look like for you? Like, what do you remember play being? And then we could share like what we remember play being. And then, how does it feel when a grown-up sees you misbehaving, maybe out in public, and they say something, versus when we were young and we were corrected by a grown-up? It was like, there's 2 different responses, right? And so Diana, what were you going to say?
Well, the idea that as we move into this, that when we were playing as children with our peers, it was low stakes. It was not somebody supervising. It was all of us kind of on the same playing field, and we would make mistakes, and we had the risk, that was risky play where, yes, I might get hurt. I might get hurt swinging and jumping off of the swing. I might get hurt on the teeter-totter, or the, what was the spinny thing?
Merry-go-round.
Merry-go-round. Thank you. That, now like, oh no, we can't have those on playgrounds because they're dangerous. But when we were kids, that was that rite of passage. And those mistakes that you made weren't costly. They weren't life or death. And we learned from them and we grew. And that helped us problem solve, and it helped us communicate, and it helped us do all of these things that make us highly functioning people in a social world.
I know, I think about like The Sandlot and like, like Breakfast Club, like all these different movies, from the 80s, and that really kind of showed like a pack of kids, like really like surviving summer or surviving, school and so forth. But just that tolerance, that stamina, that ability to bring a conversation or an argument or a celebration, start it, have it, end it, move on.
That, exactly that. He talked about how we learn to read the cues of the people with us.
Yeah.
Those, whether we were saying something funny, the nonverbal reactions, and know when it was appropriate to continue, know when it was appropriate to respond, allow somebody else to speak, and then take our turn. And I think when I listen to teachers talk, I'm not in the classroom all the time anymore, but when I hear teachers talk, that is something that our students in today's classrooms, they don't understand, that give and take.
Well, and the other thing I thought that was so well said is all of that. It's not only low stakes, but learning to communicate with one another, and also learning to resolve conflicts through all of that. It's developing their own skills, but it's also intrinsically motivating for them. Nobody's standing there telling them, okay, that was good, that was bad. They're doing it on their own. Like, okay, my friends didn't like that, or that got me what I wanted. So they're learning on their own, and or they were learning on their own. And that I thought, yeah, I never thought about that, but that's exactly right. But when it's behind a screen, you can easily misread or misunderstand or miss communication.
No, absolutely. And just the idea of play, right? Like, I love when kids are like, will you play with me? And you might be exhausted, or you may, maybe you're supervising recess, or maybe it's your own kids, but just that idea of play and my turn, your turn, following rules and holding each other accountable. And then also saying something to someone's face, that face-to-face interaction is so like tangible. That's the word I was looking for, compared to if I like text it to you or if I type it on a screen. And that is something that like, I've gotten much better at, being a specialist teacher. I've got so many children throughout my room where I'm like, no, we're going to turn and track the speaker. We're going to use our words. And it's not that I really truly think that I'm more focused on eye contact per se. I think it's more of, I want you to know this is a face-to-face interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And if it, there's ways that we can talk through this, and that feels something, your gut will tell you how that feels. And I love that. Like, no, yes, I'm there supervising because I'm a classroom teacher. I have to be here. But if it happened on the playground, like over by the swings, and maybe I was, over by the basketball, goals, maybe I would teach them that in the classroom and it would carry over into the playground. Maybe, I don't know. Just so interesting how kids want to typey things and not say, and then even down to like 16-year-olds saying, I don't know that I really want to get my license. We really don't hang out anymore. Like I can just text my friends. We can just hop on a call or play video games or things like that. And I'm probably stereotyping, so I apologize, but that seemed to be a more common trend that I've heard from some of my friends that have kids that are driving age that do not want their license at all.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think too, like when you are out and you're interacting with people that are living in the community that you're living in your schools, you're learning those socially acceptable things that are those norms in your region and in your part of the world. And if you are one that you get the opportunity to travel, you're exposed to those kinds of things. But when we are on these social media platforms, I loved how he pointed out that it can shape an adolescent's mental models of acceptable behavior, because parents don't get to use the power of that community bias. Even the parents' influence may not be felt as strongly because these social media influencers get so much of these students' time or these kids' time because they spend 2 hours a day, which somebody said it could get as much as 20 hours a week for some of these young girls on social media. That's half of a full-time job. Half of a full-time job is spent interacting in social media, where what did they say? The social media companies admitted it was a social algorithm based on likes and clicks and followers. And so I've seen this meme before about don't judge your life by somebody else's highlight reel. Our adolescents at a pivotal time in their development of their cognitive functions are watching only highlight reels.
And they're
that's the
saying
reality.
like they're getting however many likes. That must be what I should be like.
Mm-hmm.
That is the pinnacle. That should be me. And it's totally not even realistic.
And what do I do to get likes? Because I'm motivated by likes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and then, oh my gosh, what about the page that talked about like literally when you're on the virtual, connected network, maybe it's social media, you are a follower. Like you say,
I'm literally a follower.
I was like, I kept hearing back to my like childhood where it was like, be a leader, not a follower.
Don't be a follower.
It was just
Here
like,
we are.
oh my gosh, that's so wild. Like that conversation of using, that word. But on page 56, it talks about attunement practice is essential for social development as movement and exercise are essential for physical development. And I thought, ooh, that's so interesting that we're talking about the mind and body both needing practice and both needing this intentional, exercise regimen or training platform, if you will. But it really talks about setting those foundations for later emotional self-regulation and, face emotional difficulties and exhibit, behaviors later on in life, and then how to make sound decisions when risk is involved, or learn to deal effectively as they enter more and more complex social interactions. And so, I don't think that this is all on social media. I do think that there's a big conversation that's going on in here too about what the community and culture globally has shared with parents and the information that we're receiving. So, I mentioned the 16-year-olds are not getting their license. Well, yeah, some of it is because kids are like, you know what, I'm good. We don't really need to be together to like actually interact. But some of my friends who have 16-year-olds are like, no, that's too dangerous. I do not want them driving. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I get it. I don't have a 16-year-old yet, so I don't have a voice yet in the ring. But I almost feel like it's taking that element of trial, error, risk, problem solving. And I understand you're putting them in a moving vehicle. Like I totally understand that. But there is a little bit of that conversation to be reflective on as well, because we've been told, teenagers are getting, in accidents more often or this or that and so forth. So we're reading that and then we're like, okay, well, then they're not going to drive.
But don't you think that's partially, okay, I think this world we live in, we also didn't have a 24-hour news cycle that can feed into that anxious parenting piece, where when we were younger, the news was,
every morning,
in the morning, at noon,
or at 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock. And so I think that it's that combined piece. I will tell you, as an adult, I can look back and tell you, I have learned far more from the mistakes I've made than the successes that I've celebrated. And I appreciate every success I've had, but the lesson that can be learned from making the mistakes. And so when we have the combination of the over anxious parenting, where we're trying to prevent the mistakes and prevent pad our children from being disappointed or hurt or suffering. And then they are immersed in this world, this utopian world or dystopian world, not utopian, dystopian world of social media and what I need to be and what I need to do. boy, it really affects behaviors and thoughts and processes. And we're only on chapter 2, guys.
I know. I was just going to say that's a really good segue into chapter 3, which is like that discovery mode and just the need for risky play. And, just, transparently, like, I mean, I grew up in a very put a bubble around me type environment, like overnight camp and I didn't get a car when I turned 16, which sounds I know that's a privilege, but I was around many. I mean, I was the only one that didn't. And so it was just like, oh, what did I do something wrong? Like, no, my parents were like, no, like that's a risk. No, that's a risk. No, that's a risk. No. And so I sometimes reflect on that. So I share that when I'm getting ready to share a little bit more about my thoughts on chapter 3, that you're right. It does shape behaviors and decision making and other things for later life, because here I am like mid 40s and I'm like, oh yeah, like sometimes I still have to inhale and exhale before I get on 465 because I was told no.
Yeah, I thought the discover mode was very interesting, and discover and defend mode, the way that they go together, because that to me, like defend mode to me is fight or flight. Like you have those stress hormones, you're going to either go, you're gone. Discover mode, it's like you're ready to try new things, you're ready to explore, you're excited, you're positive, and then or you're in defend mode, which to me is like you are ready to shut down or you're ready to fight. No, go ahead.
So here's a question. Like one of the quotes that all three of us really talked about that kind of just made us go, we're overprotecting our children in the real world while underprotecting them online. Are there resources out there that help us? I mean, I know that there's like safety, switches and toggles on certain social media things and video games. But honestly, like, isn't it really just a box that you tap? Like, yeah, I'm over 15. I mean, is that
when the girl talked about her essay where she was 14 and wrote the Associated Press essay, we're at 10. Her mom was in the next room and she was accidentally stumbled onto porn for the first time at 10 and went back to it because she was curious. And she said it was just something that her mom was there and kind of monitoring, but her mom was in the kitchen making sure she had the, the well-rounded meal and the this and the that. And it was not intentional. It was just accidental. And she didn't know what it was. And her friends did the same thing. And I think because there is no have to prove that I'm over a certain age. There's not a validation at any given time. If I want to make a Facebook account, I check a box that I'm this age. If I want to do this, I check a box that I'm this age. And I'm excited to see Instagram has come up with this new thing that came out, but not being a parent, I don't know how that's going to work because I don't get to see that side of it. But to your point, then I wonder too, Amy, if some parents just simply don't know. We're educators, so we hear some of these dangers, but I think like the common parents, they don't know some of the things and they don't see some of the things that we see and hear and learn. And then they don't know how to manage the technology for their children.
I was thinking about that when we were saying, talking about discover and defend modes, because this underprotection online is strongly feeding into those two modes. And as kiddos grow and change and hit puberty, which we'll talk about, which is, oh my goodness, that was a whole nother chapter. That is like the brain is just developing along the way, right? And I thought, I mean, I know like Melissa, like your girls have had their first day on a university campus, right? So like, I love that lens of how do you walk that campus for the first day? Discover mode or defend mode? Well, guess what? 17 years of work has been done before that. And so it's like, wow, this is really important work that we as parents, as educators, as people in our community need to be doing to really help understand that children are playing, are offered risks, are offered these opportunities to feel important and checked, if you will, if needed, by those that are important in your community, meaning like you've deemed them like, hey, I just had a conversation with another teacher today. I was like, listen, my child can do wrong. And when she does, like, I need your help in checking her. That's not offending me. Like, she needs to know that she is being held up by the community. It's not just that. So much there. I know, I apologize, but I just was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. I do think I'm seeing a lot of overprotection in the real world, under protection online.
And that goes to all of the conversation in the book about the playgrounds.
Yes.
When you look at the playgrounds, it used to be there's a picture of this playground that looks like if you fell off of it, there's survival is maybe, but it's real. And the date is unknown. It's on page 77. And then page 78 is the typical merry-go-round.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is. And then page 79 is like the playground of today, which it's 4 feet off the ground. And, the change is, it's overly safe is the way it's described. And so that shows like how we are overprotecting, and we have to give our kids these risks in the right ways. They have to have risks playing outside, playing real, not virtual play. That play should not be risky. And I think that's where the author is saying delay online. That experience should not be an option. What that 10-year-old was describing, like that shouldn't be happening, because his recommendation is to delay. I mean, obviously that's every parent's own personal choice, but that is the recommendation, because we want to keep them safe, and that's what he's recommending.
I love that. Safe is necessary, not safe as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The idea that when I make a mistake in the real world, that promotes growth and learning.
Yeah.
But
like you said, that
a mistake,
you learn from your mistakes.
in online, think about the moments that can go viral. Something small that can go viral, and it can have such a pivotal impact on somebody. And because because we want to give our kids more practice that they need in that real world, so that they can be prepared for the online world when they get there.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah,
I know that idea of safetyism, where like you were saying on the playgrounds, and then the online, that real world where there are places out there that can promote that growth and that risk, whether it's a playground, a splash pad, a park. Notice I'm saying all things outside. That's kind of funny. Get outdoors. No, but the idea of like now, when you go to some of these places I just mentioned, there's like this laundry list of rules, and you've got a half an hour in before, you can even play, because you spent all this time reading them, if you even did. But it's like, don't. And I thought, oh, wow. So what can we do?
Right.
And then
that leads us right into chapter 4, doesn't it?
Yes.
It does. Yeah.
I know we all had to take a moment on this one. So this one's puberty and the blocked transition. And this one was super interesting in talking about like hormones and adolescence. And then there was a little bit of like girls and boys in here because of like hitting puberty at different times. Okay, something that really resonated with me in this chapter was this whole idea of a rite of passage. Okay. Mm-hmm. So like, I remember growing up, like going to like bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs and quinceañeras and different like rites of passage. But like, I never really thought of it as something that was unique and different. Like it was this celebration. I mean, it was this amazing thing to do with my classmates or myself even, and so forth. And then also I couldn't wait to be a certain age so I could do something. I couldn't wait, when I was the baby of the class. And so, here senior year, I was the only one still 17, and I was going to be for a while. Everybody voted, but I didn't, and then, flash forward to some pivotal moments. And so I'm so curious about this whole idea of like rites of passage in our culture, in our communities, even in our movie theaters. Like, you gotta, this is a PG-13 movie and you're not of age to be in this theater. Then now where it's like, here's a device, tap on the internet browser and
go to town.
Yeah, that was so interesting to read about, because I get it. I grew up in different limitations and rites of passage, but I don't know. I don't know that that's, I don't know. It was such an interesting point that was brought up in this chapter.
Well, and you mentioned it, that block transition. Like, we have a lot of students that they're not motivated to get a driver's license. I couldn't wait to get mine. You mentioned that same thing for me. Yeah. And so it's almost like a failure to launch into, and I think that of that as that old rom-com that I adored, because you kind of giggle about that, but I think we're seeing more and more, and failure to launch is not the anomaly anymore. It is becoming the norm. We're failing to launch into the next period of our lives, whether it is that I'm getting my license, or I'm going to move out and be independent, or I'm going to take those steps of whatever it is for that rite of passage.
Did you guys see how they were likening Jonathan, the author, was likening the smartphone to a cuckoo bird, like almost like marking its territory, like all around. First of all, I learned something new about cuckoo birds. I apologize. I did not know that they like go around and mark their territory. But I was like, oh my goodness, that was bold and kind of a good thinking point for me. Right. It was so wild to see how, the discover and defend modes, when put through puberty, can cause that chronic or maybe that acute stress that, as we become a grown-up, have to navigate through, I guess is maybe the best way to say it. I don't know. How we deal with it, how we, maybe certain behaviors that we still do that we don't realize we're doing. And then what is out there to sort of help us maybe take a step back and look. So for example, like he was saying something about like celebrating the even year birthdays with like certain things, like, 6-year-olds, you should be able to have a household chore. 10-year-olds, you should be able to, 14-year-olds, you should be able to, 16-year-olds, you should be able to. I was thinking back to like when my kiddos were babies and we had like, congratulations on your 9-month, your 9 months. Your child should be able to. And I was like, oh, thank goodness somebody gave me some guidelines. I had to wonder, my kiddos just saw the pediatrician and I thought, I don't know that we got guidelines like that. Like, and I'm even an educator who is like reading books about this stuff just so I can know more. And I thought that was so interesting that
I wouldn't be surprised if that starts coming from pediatricians, like if it's not like social media or technology.
I know that they're asking about it because I know like our kiddo's pediatrician was a little surprised that like my 11-year-old doesn't have a phone, isn't on social media. And he was like, really? He's like, you're like my first patient. And I thought, like he's only 11. And they were like, yeah, but this is why I asked the question. So I think it's more conversational than it is instructing, maybe with the parent. I don't know. We should have a pediatrician on as a guest.
That'd be fun.
I'm like, I don't know. I need to find though this one's place. Where is it? Oh, okay. I brought up the whole thing about the cuckoo bird, and I wanted to make sure that I brought that to a close. It talked about when a smartphone, tablet, or video game console lands in a child's life, it will push out most other activities, at least partially. And the child will spend many hours sitting enthralled and motionless, except for one finger, while ignoring everything beyond the screen. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting that maybe we've, that whole idea of the smartphone, the tablets, the video game consoles coming in and taking over. But we always talk ourselves about balance and working with our kiddos, setting those limits. And I think, we do that in the classrooms. I would hope that we've got friends and family out in the world that are setting those limits too, like 30 minutes of screen time, or, X amount this, or play 60. I think that's still a thing. But just really continuing to bring up those opportunities to set limits, and that's okay, and balance. And it doesn't have to be outside, but just activity and taking eyeballs off. I don't know. I think that would be so interesting to dig more into what resources are out there pulling kiddos in that direction of navigating what it feels like to not have a device in your hands, to not be playing.
Yeah, I think the root of this, there's just so much for us to unpack and to think about, little small tweaks that we can make to help our students and our children to become more connected with play-based life versus digital life. And it's just really interesting to see. I'm excited to see where this will go, because I'm reading as we go. I've not read the whole thing. So I'm really anxious to see where we get into when we go to chapter 5 and the next part of the book.
Yeah. That part is the great rewiring, where it's going to start off by talking about the rise of the phone-based childhood. And I love that we've got so many questions that have come out of this, so many I wonders. It's going to be super interesting to see just these foundational conversations, brain research, some data points, some thoughts, some opinions, and then kind of channel that and funnel it into, all right, what are some foundational things that have caused, these brains to be rewired, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think on that note, does that kind of wrap us up for today? And we're ready we hope that you come back and join us when we dive into part 3 and keep on going here with the anxious generation.
Yeah. And keep your I wonder questions coming too. Cause a lot of this, we are so blessed to be able to have this opportunity to talk and voice out oh, this made me think, or this is a connection I had. So yeah, keep letting us know if you've got connections or if you've got thoughts, and we welcome your voice to the table.
Yeah. All of our X handles are here on our little profiles. So you can reach out to us on X and with those I wonders if you want. So we look forward to hearing from you potentially, and we hope you'll join us the next time when we come back for part 3 of The Anxious Generation.